Harris, as a prosecutor, should be well aware not using terms like that. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, along with members of Congress and the Senate from both sides of the aisle, were at the Munich Security Conference. Along with quite a few other people, she made a speech. And as she started that speech, it was, as you would expect, the normal condemnations and stating that Russia had done this and Ukraine is plucky and defended itself. She said that she wanted to answer the questions about it on two major aspects. One was the moral aspect, which she would deal with first, and the second one was the strategic aspect. She started off and she said that it was an unprovoked war. This comment just sort of sailed over, I would imagine, most of the people sitting in the auditorium listening. Kamala Harris has been a prosecutor in the American legal system. And she's basically saying that this is an unprovoked war. No, it just happened. There seems to be a few details missed out of here. I'll compress these because most people should by now be well aware of them. The agreement when the Berlin Wall fell and East Germany and West Germany joined together. There was a bit of a powwow between the US and the USSR, as it was at the time, between Reagan and Gorbachev. And the gentleman's agreement was that in return for a number of things that the USSR would do, is that NATO is a term which supposedly encompasses all of these countries in Western Europe, along with the United States and Canada, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. In reality, NATO is America and whatever America, in my mind, wants to happen. There is only 3, and possibly now only 2, major combatant countries in that list. The United States and France. I think Britain is probably trailing a third to France in the numbers of men and equipment. But NATO, in essence, is the United States. The agreement was that NATO wouldn't push east. There's enough examples being drawn to Cuba and how would America feel if a third power put bases in possibly Mexico or Quebec or somewhere in the Caribbean. Those have been well explored, and the answer is the United States would not allow that. This agreement with NATO was subsequently broken a number of times by every successive US president. All of them pushed east. All of them built NATO bases. All of them pushed east, building bases and extending the influence in the cordon surrounding the USSR. It then became Russia and subsequently shrunk in size. The same process still continued, pushing east, encircling, putting a band around Russia. Unprovoked war. There was a disagreement. There was a request for more autonomy by some of the regions in the east of Ukraine. This boiled up and became a fighting conflict, and this progressed for a number of years, with thousands of people killed, both on the Ukraine side and on the, for want of a better term, the breakaway republics, which are originally part of Ukraine. Minsk I, broken by France and Germany, didn't uphold their part of the bargain. Minsk II, broken by France and Germany. Unprovoked war. I would think that there is provocation. You could argue whether the provocation warrants a war, but you can't say that it was unprovoked. There's minor issues like the gas issue in Ukraine, diverting, taking, stealing, use whichever term you feel comfortable with, amounts of gas from Russia, which used the pipelines going through Ukraine to supply Western Europe. Consequently, you had Russia looking for alternative routes, less costly routes, routes where they could realistically make more of the assets. Hence, we have Nord Stream 1 and subsequently Nord Stream 2. The Germans in Western Europe were more than happy to get access to a continuing supply of quality, cheap natural gas, primarily methane. There'll probably be some methane in there as well. You're talking CH4, C2H6. Putting all of those aside, the major reason was Ukraine's push against people that wanted to be separatist, more autonomy in Ukraine. The idea that it's an unprovoked war, someone needs to have raised this point. It sailed past nobody. She then went on, this is Harris, then went on stating atrocities, war crimes. There's lots of video. It's impossible sometimes to tell, and I'm not saying that there hasn't been. I'm just saying for a crime to be committed, you've got to have someone that's been the perpetrator. You've got to take them before a court. You've got to take the ruling of the court before that can actually be called a war crime. Just someone stating, this is a war crime, fine. She may think it's a war crime. Lots of people may think it's a war crime. And in fact, within Ukraine, some Russians have been taken to court by the Ukrainians for killing people. Just because Harris says that it's a war crime doesn't make it so. She should know this as a prosecutor. She goes on and saying the attacks were against civilian populations, This is if you go and take a look at what a war crime, the definitions are in the Crimes Against Humanity, which she brings up. Making attacks which cause civilian population casualties can be classified as war crimes and also crimes on humanity. This opens other avenues which perhaps the Americans would prefer not to go down. You've got the US has been involved in various conflicts from the Second World War onwards. If you're talking about attacks on civilian populations, there's a body of thought which says that possibly the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki could be classified as a war crime, could be classified as humanitarian. America was involved in Vietnam, Agent Orange, widespread use of Agent Orange. This was a defoliant, widespread use of napalm, which was a sticky jelly type subject. Bombing of third countries that weren't primarily involved in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. This is before we get on to the UN-sanctioned matches in the 90s with Saddam and Afghanistan. What Harris was going down the path of was basically mob rule, because she thinks, and lots of other people, to be fair, think that it's a war crime, that it makes it a war crime, and because it's a war crime, we can do this or we can do that. It's a crime against humanity. The rules are off, therefore we can do this. She should know as a prosecutor, she should know as someone that studied the law, that mob rule doesn't end. She should know that mob rule has a way of getting out the hand. Perhaps some of the things that happened daily in America could possibly be termed crimes against humanity. If you take a look at the murder stats for some of the major cities in the United States, including Chicago, you're looking in the hundreds, if not thousands, of people being killed in the United States each year. Apparently, the American federal government doesn't seem to have any role in this, in trying to stop it. She stated, murders, torture. These things are going on. These things are going on in the United States. She says as a prosecutor, she had to gather the facts and hold them up to the law, hold them up to scrutiny. Also, she would have to take it to court. Now, whether it was a jury decision or whether it was just a court decision, then she had to present these facts and get a decision. Sometimes she would win, sometimes she would lose. But until it's been to court, it should be alleged. That's why on this one, the little banner at the top says alleged war crimes. You can't go down this route of just saying, yeah, I seen it. There was a tank. This guy shot this guy. Look, all them dead bodies, blah, 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 blah. We're going down the path of mob rule. Why do you need a court? I've just said to you, it's a war crime. Believe me, I'm the VP. My boss says the same thing. Or Joey Biden, he says the same. Believe him as well. It's a rocky road if you start doing that. Yeah, gather the facts, fine. There should be heaps of evidence, heaps of video. Put your case together. The case would be tried either in Ukraine, and if that case, it would be Ukrainian court that would decide it, or it would be decided by the International Criminal Court, which resides in The Hague in Holland, the Netherlands. The ICC. This court, before it can make a decision, it has to have a defendant. It has to be presented with evidence, and then it can make a decision based on that evidence. If you haven't got a defendant, you can't get a ruling. That seems to be the normal way of working. Harris said that the people that purported to have done these alleged crimes against humanity, would be found and would be tried, blah, 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 they would be taken to task. She didn't say how this would happen. She said she had indisputable facts. Okay, fine, present them. She didn't mention them other than just in generalities, and I wouldn't have expected her to do that at this type of meeting. But she said it's an unprovoked war and it's indisputable facts. I would think that the representation for the other party in this matter would contest both the unprovoked war and also the indisputable facts. She didn't go on and say how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, blah, blah, blah. She then moved swiftly on to the strategic aims. World peace, blah, 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 globalization, blah, 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 security, and basically saying that Russia can't wait us out. We will back Ukraine for as long as it takes. I would think that statement is mutable. America is a place of instant things, instant gratification type things. You know, I started a job, I've been here 30 days and, you know, I'm still not a managing director. What's going on? There's an element of that. Americans want to see progress. They want things to happen pretty quickly, have a low threshold for boredom on these matters. The war has lasted a year. It's lasted probably far longer than initially what people in the United States government had thought it would. America has poured a huge, huge amount of money into Ukraine. It's poured a huge amount of armaments and continues to do so. She's rattling the tin for all of the other NATO members to step up and put more into Ukraine, to assist Ukraine for as long as it takes. There's elements in Europe, and there's quite a few people within Europe that don't want to go down this forever war. Europe has lots of problems. Every country has lots of problems. The problems change as time goes over. But people in the United States, and I would imagine people in the UK and people in Europe, will be saying, how come nobody's talking about peace? How come we are paying higher taxes? We're giving them all of this support. When's it going to end? There's the mushroom cloud scenario hanging over everybody. This didn't get mentioned by Harris. That if you squeeze Russia so hard and push them into a corner, perhaps something more dramatic will happen. The idea seems to have been from the United States has always been to just gently squeeze Russia, squeeze them financially and squeeze them by putting this ring of steel around Russia. They're doing exactly the same with China. They're putting bases in Asia, more bases in the Philippines. She said it's unprovoked, and she said that it's indisputable. I would think there would be people that would disagree with her on both of those points. You can get into the long grass whatever, whether it's a just war or an unjust war, and you'll get the semantics of the lawyers talking in these tiny little phrases, and you'll get the Bill Clintonization of it, and what does the word "and" mean, or it, or what, or this could go on a long time. The war, the physical war, I've got no idea how long. According to the Western media, you just need to give Ukraine just more tanks and more money, more bullets, more howitzers, more planes, and more everything. There's been a creeping barrage and step up over the last year. The Germans started off by sending the Ukrainians metal helmets. We're now at the stage that the Germans are sending them tanks. That's the mission creep as it's expanded. In the UK, we've got universally warmongering politicians. Previous Prime Minister Johnson, warmonger. He wants to give them tanks, all the tanks, and all the planes. Maybe just give them all the ships as well. You've got Truss, ex-Prime Minister, ex-Foreign Minister, wants to give Ukraine more support. You've got the current Prime Minister, Sunak, pledging more support, more support. You've got the Prime Minister, in my mind, in waiting, Starmer, was out to Ukraine speaking with President Zelensky, saying that come what may, if the election means a change in government, i.e. the Conservatives who are in power now get booted out, is the most likely will, in my opinion, and a Labour socialist government takes over, with him as the Prime Minister, then he will continue exactly as what Sunak's done. There's no discussion. We're all behind you, Zelensky. Well, can we just settle down here? There's a lot of people in the UK are not happy with this unlimited war forever. Britain has been too easily roped into these conflicts overseas. It's done very, very little for the people of the UK. Billions of pounds spent on wars. Afghanistan, Iraq, hundreds of British servicemen dead or maimed or psychologically PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, compromised people for their life. Boris and Truss and Sunak and Starmer are all lining up and saying, "Raw, raw, raw, we're going to back Ukraine, come what may, give them all of this." Britain's giving them tanks. Partly we've only got a couple hundred, but we can give you 14 as a starter for 10. How many more we're going to give them? We're not going to give you planes. We're just going to train your lot to fly them. There's already reports of American service personnel on the ground in Ukraine. Unsubstantiated, but in support capabilities and capacities. A lot of this gear that they're sending to Ukraine is highly specialized, needs people to service it. Britain's now talking about giving Ukraine weapons that can go further, that can attack perhaps even into Russia. Where's the peace? Where we're talking for peace? Yeah. Why aren't we talking about peace? If you do that, or if that's done, I would imagine from the Russian side, they'd say, "Oh, we just need to push the Ukrainians further back. If we need a buffer." The whole idea was that Ukraine was a buffer. This is just walking down the path to war. My granddad was in the First World War, got gassed, cut his life short. My dad was in a reserved occupation, thankfully, in the Second World War, but got called up to do a couple of years in the RAF, working as a fitter. We haven't had conscription in the UK, the draft. We haven't needed it. It's the personal things, the personal people involved. But also, we're talking money here. Truss has said we ain't got no money. Sunak said we ain't got no money. We're going to have to, you're talking about money. We're talking about democracy, man. Democracy and freedom. Yeah, you've got the freedom to live in the country with more food banks this year than last year. You've got the freedom and democracy to live in a country where the NHS waiting list has went up from 7 million to 7,200,000. Stop whinging about giving money to Ukraine. You're just being selfish. It's a terrible situation, what's going on in Ukraine. No doubts about that. It's terrible all these people have had to leave. It's terrible all the people that's been killed on both sides. But I think this will back you as long as it takes without looking at the root cause, the real problem. Harris went on to, as most American presidents tend to at some point, and talk about, you know, how plucky the colonialists were in the 13 colonies down there in the Carolinas and places like that. And they had like a little bit of a revolution, and they kicked the Brits out. Self-determination and stuff like that. So it's fine for the Americans to have self-determination and decide that they didn't want to be part of Britain's empire. That's great. But apparently it's not great for the people in like the Donetsk areas to decide that they no longer want to be part of Ukraine, or the Crimea no longer wants to be part of Ukraine. So a couple of 100 years ago, it was okay to break away. But now that's verboten. It's forbidden. You can't do that. She obviously got a clap at the end. You've basically got a bunch of warmongers sat at a conference. The arms manufacturers love it. More bullets, more shells, more planes, more tanks, more profit, more money. There's a few dead people in Ukraine, a few people and stuff like that. We can make a load of money on this. The money is secondary, but it drives a lot of people. America's on about war crimes, crimes against humanity. They've got to be in and taken to the International Criminal Court. There's lots of countries signed up to this agreement. America originally did. But, and it said, no, thank you. America isn't in the International Criminal Court organization. The reason why is quite straightforward. It doesn't want any of its troops prosecuted. America has bilateral agreements with lots of countries throughout the world, which basically, if you can get a bilateral agreement with another country, then your soldiers can't be taken to the ICC. There's lots of things happened in Iraq. Well publicized, well known about. It's fine for America to say these things, but apparently it's not fine for America to sign up for them. It's fine for other countries' citizens to be subjected to the ICC court, but it's not fine for American citizens to be covered by the same. Israel, Palestine. Both sides have been accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity. Neither side signed up to the ICC. Perhaps if America signed up to the ICC, and bearing in mind these bilateral agreements America ties to aid, i.e. if you don't sign up to a bilateral which exempts Americans against that country, then we won't give you aid. Perhaps if America signed up to the ICC, then people might possibly believe Harris when she starts going on about war crimes and how it's moral. And we've got to sort all of this out. You can't go back to Hiroshima, Nagasaki. You can't go back to Vietnam. It's too far away. It's too long ago. Iraq wasn't. Afghanistan wasn't. There's lots of conflicts that the Americans have been involved in. It sounds like I got it down on the Americans. Not so. I think the American people, and I've been to the States a few times, have always found them really friendly people, nice. I've worked with American lads, found them easy to get on with. But even the American lads I've worked with have a complete, they're not a contempt in distrust for their government, the doublespeak which comes out of it. Kamala Harris, Munich Security Conference, it should be alleged war crimes, alleged crimes against humanity. So this is run past a jury or a court and stuff like that. Harris, as a prosecutor, should be well aware not using terms like that without putting the prefix alleged in front. My personal views, I want the war to finish. I want there to be peace. I want there to be a peace settlement between the Ukrainians and the Russians that both sides can live with. Both sides will have to give something up, but it should be something that both sides can live with peaceably. Perhaps NATO and predominantly the United States needs to ease off on this putting bases all over the world log. Thank you.